Masechet Zevaḥim Daf Lamed Vav, which will also be the last daf in the third perek. Mishnah teaches shechato al menat lehaniach et damo o emurav lemachad o losian nachus Rabbi Yehuda posel chachamim machshirin. So far, we saw the basic prohibition of a kohen or anyone who is doing shechita, who has in mind that he will consume the meat outside the time or place, or that he will burn it on the altar outside the time or place. Or if a kohen does any of the other basic avodot, having intention to consume the animal outside the time or outside the place, that is pasul and pigul. That we saw the Pesukim where it derives from. But now we're dealing with a slightly different case of someone who does shechita and he has in mind that he's going to leave the blood and not do anything with it. Not that he's going to sprinkle it in the wrong time, or that he's going to leave the sacrificial parts that are supposed to be burned. He's going to leave it till tomorrow. The blood is supposed to be sprinkled today, and the sacrificial parts should be put on the mizbeach today, the same day as the shechita. He doesn't have in mind that he's going to do it tomorrow. Rather, he has in mind that he's going to do nothing today and just leave it as is till tomorrow, which means he's not going to do it today, but not that he is going to do it tomorrow. So it's more of a thinking that he's not going to do anything, more of a passive intention rather than an action that he's going to offer them tomorrow. So therefore, this is less severe and therefore subject to a machloket. Or if he has in mind that he's going to take the blood or the sacrificial parts outside of the sanctuary, which is also prohibited. So if you actually do that, it's no good. But what if you just think about doing that while doing shechita? Rabbi Yehuda says, in all these cases, that makes the whole animal pasul. You got to bring another one. Doesn't work. Hachamim say, no, it's okay. The Torah only talked about those two intentions of consuming it outside of the time or outside the place. That's what makes it pasul. And even though these other things you're not allowed to do, and if you do them, it'll be a problem, but just thinking about doing them while doing shechita, according to Chachamim, is not a problem. And we'll see Rabbi Yehuda's source. Now we have a list that everybody agrees. If you have intention to do one of these things, it's okay. Although you're not allowed to do these things, but intention to do these things is not going to ruin the korban. If one does shechita, having intention that he's going to put the blood not on the right place on the mizbeach, but rather on the ramp, or on the place on the mizbeach that is not where there's a foundation part of it, where you're supposed to put it where there is a foundation that goes around most of the mizbeach on the bottom, that's where you should put it above that. If he puts it on a side of the mizbeach that doesn't have that foundation. Some korbanot, you're supposed to put them above. And instead of putting it above the red line in the middle of the mizbeach, he puts it below. Or it's supposed to be below and he puts it above. He has intention that he's going to put it above, that is. Or if it's a korban that is supposed to be sprinkled on inside the sanctuary, and he has in mind while doing shechita, I'm going to sprinkle this outside, or the other way around, it's supposed to be outside, and he has intention to sprinkle it inside. Or he does shechita having intention that a tameh person will eat it, or a tameh person will put the parts on the mizbeach, or someone who's not circumcised will eat it, or someone who's not circumcised will burn it on the mizbeach. He does shechita having in mind that when he eats this, it's a korban pesach, he's going to break the bones, which is not allowed. You have to leave the bones whole. Or he's going to eat it raw. That's also not allowed. It has to be roasted. Le'arev damo bedam hapesulim kasher. He has in mind that he's going to mix its blood with blood that is pasul. Let's say blood from another korban that you took out of the sanctuary and brought it back in. So that blood is pasul, and so he's going to mix it together, which will make it all pasul. Even though doing all these things is not allowed, But just having intention to do them while doing shechita, that does not make the korban pasul. Why? She'en machshava poselet ela bechutz zmano vechutz limkomo ve'apesa v'chata shelo lishman. Because according to Chachamim, the intention only makes a korban pasul if, while doing shechita or one of the main avodot, one has in mind to consume it outside the time or outside the place, or if it's a korban pesach or korban chatat, and you have in mind during shechita or one of the avodot that you say, oh, this is a korban olah or any other type of korban, only those two, if you have the wrong type of korban, that also makes it pasul. And according to the Yehuda, also he would say these items here make it pasul. But the rest of the things on the list, everyone agrees, are not so severe, and although they're not permitted to do, but intention regarding them will not make the korban pasul. My tamad Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda add in those things if you just leave it over? Just leave it to be notar till tomorrow, and I'm not going to do with the services. I'm not going to burn it. That how come Rabbi Yehuda says that intention to do that also makes it pasul? Amar Rabbi Elazar, teret keraeketi be'benotar. Katuv echad omer lo tatir mimenu ad boker, v'katuv echad omer lo yaniach mimenu ad boker. Imenu inyan lehaniach, teneu leinyan machshevet hinoach. And Rabbi Elazar explains that there's two pesukim regarding leftovers. One pasuk says, do not leave any over until the morning. The context there is a korban pesach. You have to eat it that day and night, and you cannot leave her. You have to eat it that night, and you can't leave any over until the next morning. Korban pesach has to you cook it. You sacrifice it in the afternoon, and you have to eat it that night. You cannot leave any over until even the next day. And so we learned that other korbanot also have a time limit. You can't leave them over whatever the time limit is. Now, there's another pasuk that says, do not leave it over until the morning. Why do I need a second pasuk? I already have the first one. So if it's not talking about the prohibition of actually leaving it over the time, so it must be talking about something else. What's something else? Oh, it's intention. While doing shechita, you have intention that I'm not going to consume it. I'm not going to sacrifice it. I'm just going to leave it till tomorrow. So intention, like that intention is going to make it pasul. That's Rabbi Yehuda's source. But we challenge this. But Rabbi Yehuda, is he really learning this law from this pasuk? We already used this pasuk for something else. Let's look at the full pasuk inside, because we're going to learn from all the parts of it. The flesh of a korban todah. This is talking about a korban todah, which is it's a type of shelamim. On that day, it can be eaten. Do not leave any over till the morning. Unlike a regular shelamim that can be eaten day, night, and day, korban todah can be eaten only that day and that night. That's it. But you can't leave out any over to the next day. So it's pretty a wordy sentence. You could have shortened this a bit. So why do you have so many words here? And this is the part that we quoted above. Lo yaniach mimenu ad boker. Don't leave any over. This is the part that Rabbi Yehuda said, that Rabbi Yehuda uses to teach me intention. But we're going to see that we're going to learn something from every single word in this whole pasuk. So what do we learn from here? So from this basic pasuk, we can learn that korban todah is eaten in the day and that night, and that's it. But what about an exchange? You have a korban todah, you lost it, but I still have to bring a korban todah. So I get a replacement, and then I find the original. Well, you know what? The replacement and the original, I can only eat that day and that night. But how do I know that? Or if korban todah is a pregnant animal, and then it has a child. That fetus, that offspring, also has to be offered as a korban todah with the same law. It has to be in the day and the night. Or if I try to exchange it, which I'm not allowed to do, but if I do exchange it, then the original and the exchange both become holy, and both the original and the exchange I can eat only in the day and the night. Well, what's the source? Talmud Omar ubesar. So that extra word in the pasuk, ubesar. You could just said zebach todat shelamav. Why do you have to say ubesar? So it comes to teach me those three. Chatat v'asham minayin, Talmud Omar zebach. And now this is true for chatat and asham also have to be in that day and that night. How do you know? Because it says the word zebach. You didn't need the word zebach. You could have said todah. Uminayin l'rabot shalmei nazir v'shalmei pesach Talmud Omar shelamav. And how do I know that also the korban shelamim of a nazir and shelamim of a pesach? That's the korban chagiga. Also, you have to eat it before the cutoff time. You can't leave it. You can't leave it over. But from the pasuk shelamav, you could have just said todah. What's the pasuk? What's the word shelamav? Comes to add that. Lachmei todah v'chalot urkikim shebenazir minayin, and the meal offerings that are brought together with the todah and together with the korbanot of a nazir. How do you know that those also have to be eaten in the right time, a day and a night? Talmud Omar korbano. So the extra word korbano. Kolan korani bahen lo yaniach. And so each of these words is coming to add another type of korban. And then it says all these lo yaniach, do not leave any of them until the next day. They all have to be eaten in the day and the night. So you see that we need this pasuk in order to teach me these laws about all of these korbanot. So I cannot use this pasuk lo yaniach for the Bi Yehuda's law because it's already used. So how does the Bi Yehuda use this? Rely on this pasuk. Im ken lemakera lo totiru. Mai lo yaniach im eno inyan lehinoach teno inyan lemachshevet hinoach. Oh, because the pasuk could have used the more usual phrase lo totiru, as it says in the other pasuk. Do not leave it any over. Why is it using the more unusual verb lo yaniach? Don't leave it. Oh, must be to teach us yet something extra. So the fact that there's a verb there at all teaches me the context that was in that braita, all those things. And the fact that it uses an unusual word teaches something else. What's something else? Oh, something else must be the intention of leaving it over, and that's the source for the Bi Yehuda. Okay, so far so good. Hatenach lehaniach losi mai ika lememar. So far you brought a pasuk for the Bi Yehuda regarding if someone intends just to leave over the blood and the meat till tomorrow and not do anything with it. Okay, this is the source. But the Bi Yehuda also had a disagreement regarding someone who has intention to take the sacrifice outside of the temple, which you're not allowed to do. And Rabbi Yehuda says if you intend to do that while doing shechita, that also makes it pasul. But this pasuk is not a source for that. So where's Yehuda? What's the Yehuda's source for that? We don't have one. And furthermore, I don't even need this pasuk lo yaniach even for that first law, because it's all logical. Detanya. Amar lehem Rabbi Yehuda, I atem modim she'im hinicho lemachar shu pasul. A braita continues the conversation that's in the Mishnah, and says that Rabbi Yehuda told Chachamim, don't you agree with me that if someone actually left over the blood or the or the animal until the next day, and he didn't do a service, he just left the blood there, he didn't sprinkle it, he didn't do anything, and you can't sprinkle it the next day, so therefore it's pasul. Wouldn't you agree with me regarding that? So yes, everybody would agree with that part. So the Rabbi Yehuda says, Af chishev lahanicho lemachar pasul. So too, it's logical that if one has intention to leave it over till the next day, that also it will be pasul. That just makes sense. All right, just like the other for pigul, if I have intention that it's going to consume it the next day, that's not allowed, and so intention to do it also is not allowed. It's going to make it pasul. Just like if you did it, it would be pasul. So intention to do it would be pasul. If you're going to go and sacrifice it outside the place, well, if you did that, it's pasul. So intention also is pasul. So he's using the same logic here. If you leave it over and don't do any of the sacrificial the services today, and you just leave it, then you can't do it tomorrow, then it's going to be pasul. So therefore, I think intention to do it is also pasul. Therefore, it's just logical, and it doesn't even need a pasuk. El tamad Rabbi Yehuda sebarahu v'niflog namer Rabbi Yehuda b'chulahu. So now we ask about that. If it's just based on logic, how come Rabbi Yehuda does not disagree on all of the things in the rest of the Mishnah. He only disagrees on a couple of the issues in the beginning of the Mishnah, but then we listed a whole bunch of other things that are prohibited, and yet Rabbi Yehuda says, if you have an intention to do those things, it's okay. Why doesn't he say that intention to do any of the things on the list will also make it pasul? Well, let's go through them. Which one should he disagree with? When he has intention to break the bone of Korban Pesach or to eat it raw, well, let's say he actually did that. It's prohibited to do that, but let's say he actually did that. Would the korban become disqualified retroactively? You did the korban, you sacrificed it, everything proper, and then came that night, and then someone breaks a bone. Now you're going to say the whole korban is pasul? No, he violated a law, but the korban is not pasul. Therefore, just like actually doing it does not make the korban pasul, so too intending to do it is not going to make the korban pasul. Intention will always only make things pasul if actually doing it would make it pasul. And so too with the rest of them. Although someone tameh is not allowed to eat it or to put the parts of the animal on the mizbeach, if he did, would the korban be pasul? As long as you did the sprinkling properly, if a tameh person does the sprinkling, then indeed, you're right, it is pasul. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a tameh person eating it or putting the animal parts on the mizbeach. He's not allowed, and he'll get a sin if he does that, but it doesn't make it pasul. Therefore, intention also will not make it pasul. If someone who is not circumcised eats it, or burns the sacrificial parts, although he's not allowed to serve as an arel, but if he does, will the korban be pasul? It will not be pasul, and therefore intention also will not make it pasul. Or another reason, kol kimine, is it in his power to make someone else do something? Right, this guy who was doing shechita, let's say he's tahor and he's circumcised, so he's doing shechita with intention that some other guy that he knows who's an arel or who's an arel will go and make it and eat it while being arel. Well, okay, so he's going to go to him and says, "Listen, I had intention for you to do this. So yeah, can you do it?" And the guy will say, "No, I don't want to make a sin." And so, since it's not in his power to actually do it, so therefore his intention to do it is meaningless. That's another reason why intention for an arel person would not make it pasul. Larev daman bedama pesulin r'biuda l'tameh damar en dam mebatel dam. Another thing on the list was if he has intention while doing shechita, he's going to mix the blood of this korban with blood that from another korban that was taken outside and brought back in, or is pasul for any other reason. Having intention to do that will not make the korban pasul. Rabbi Yehuda is consistent with his opinion because he says that blood mixed together with other blood, it does not mevatel, it does not nullify it. And so it doesn't matter if it's more blood, that's pasul, or less blood. The blood that's kosher remains kosher even though it's mixed up. It's min b'mino, and so therefore there's no bitul, and that's why Rabbi Yehuda, we saw earlier, says you can take a whole bunch of blood and sprinkle it on the mizbeach for korban pesach, just in case any of it fell on the floor and was not used, even though there's going to be all types of other blood in there also. Okay, but dam and dam mevatel dam, and so therefore the kosher blood that is in there can still be used, and therefore intention to do this is not going to make the whole thing pasul. If he has intention to sprinkle it above, to sprinkle something that's supposed to be above, and instead he has intention to put it below, or it's supposed to be below the red line and he has intention to put it above, Rabbi Yehuda says that intention will not make it pasul because he's consistent with his opinion that putting it in a place that's not its place is like putting it in a place where it is proper. You shouldn't do that, lecha techila, but if you did it, then we count it as being put on the mizbeach. And so therefore, intention to do this is not going to make it pasul because even if you actually do it, it's not pasul. Veliflog benitanin bifnin shenetanan bachutz, vehanitanin bachutz shenetanan bifnim. Now we said, what about the thing on the list of if if you have intention for something that's supposed to be the blood sprinkled inside, and he has intention that he's going to sprinkle it on the outside mizbeach, or supposed to go on the outside mizbeach, and he has intention to sprinkle it inside. So how about that? Wouldn't Rabbi Yehuda agree with that? That is pasul, and the answer is kasabar Rabbi Yehuda ba'inan makom shehem mishulash bedam bebasar ube'emurin. No, Rabbi Yehuda would say that's not pasul, because in order for something to be pasul, if you sprinkle it in the wrong place, it has to be that you sprinkle it in a place that theoretically could be viable for all three things: for blood placement, for burning the flesh, and for burning the insides. So if you go and sprinkle it outside of the courtyard of the Bet HaMikdash altogether, or intention to do so outside the place, that will make it pasul, because those places outside, once upon a time during Bamot, one could sprinkle blood, flesh, and sacrificial parts in those outside places. But in the sanctuary, within the Hechal itself, there, yes, we do blood offerings there. Various korbanot have to be sprinkled inside, but you never sacrifice flesh or the innards in the Hechal. And therefore, since it's never used for that, never was used for that, and never currently is used for that, therefore, having intention to put those things there will not make it pasul, and Rabbi Yehuda agrees with that ruling. And now we ask, does Rabbi Yehuda actually agree with this reasoning? This is a reasoning that we actually learned from the pasuk in Vayikra Yutet, from the word shilishi, that you have to be all three. And so does Rabbi Yehuda really think this logic, this derivation that says that if you bring the blood into the inner sanctuary, we're supposed to be on the outer sanctuary, and sprinkle it in the inner mizbeach, that is not pasul? והתניא רבי יהודה אומר דבר רע ריבה כאן חטאת ששחטה בדרום וחטאת שנכנסת מהלפנים פסולה. We have this baraita that says, according to the Rabbi Yehuda, the pasuk that says, do not sacrifice to Hashem an ox or sheep that has a blemish, or any davar ra. What's davar ra coming to include? It's coming to include two things: a korban chatat, that you slaughtered it in the south. The korban chatat is supposed to be done north of the mizbeach. If you slaughter it in the south, it's no good. Or if it's a korban chatat and it's supposed to be sprinkled outside, and instead one sprinkled it inside the hechal, it's pasul. So see, Rabbi Yehuda says sprinkling it inside is pasul. So how could you say over here that Rabbi Yehuda thinks that sprinkling on the inside is kasher? And so we ask on that, Velet Rabbi Yehuda shilishi. So now you're trying to tell me Rabbi Yehuda does not agree with that shilishi derivation, that sprinkling on the inside will still be kasher. Here we have a proof from a Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda thinks that it's okay. Ve'atenan amar Rabbi Yehuda hechnis b'shogeg kasher habemezid pasul v'kaimalan b'sheh kiper. The Mishnah later on in this Masechet says that according to Rabbi Yehuda, if someone brought blood into the hechal by mistake, then the korban is still kosher. But if he brought it in b'mezid on purpose, then it's pasul. And in the discussion there, we said it's not just about if he brings it in and carrying it in, but rather kiper, that actually sprinkled it on the inner altar, then it will make the korban pasul. Now let's analyze. Hashta umatam ayla ikiper in ila kiper la hachad chashib chashube lo kol sheken. So if in that case where he actually brought it in, and if he sprinkled it on the mizbeach, then it will be pasul. But if he didn't sprinkle it on the mizbeach, it will not be pasul, even though he carried the blood into the sanctuary where it's not supposed to be. In this case, where he just has a thought about bringing it inside, he didn't even actually bring it inside. He didn't bring it inside. He certainly didn't actually sprinkle it, but he only thought about doing so. All the more so, it should not make it pasul. And therefore, we see that according to this statement of Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah, it's clear that he thinks that if someone intends to bring the blood into the sanctuary and sprinkle it there, it will not be pasul. But yet we said said over here that Davara comes to say that if he sprinkles it inside, then it is pasul. Well, so therefore, if one has thought about doing it, so maybe that should also be pasul. So now we don't know, because Rabbi Yehuda is saying contradictory things. And the answer is Tere Tanaeva, Libad Rabbi Yehuda. There's actually two traditions, both in the name of Rabbi Yehuda, who cite him differently. And so yes, we in fact have two different traditions, but we can say that our Mishnah is like the one tradition that says that it's not pasul, and therefore he doesn't think that intention to do it is pasul. Now, the other item mentioned in that baraita is that according to Rabbi Yehuda, if a korban chatat is slaughtered in the south, that it's pasul, it's no good. Now, is that true that Rabbi Yehuda would say he's liable? It's a sin, it's pasul, and he's liable to receive lashes? Havatanya Rabbi Yehuda omer gechol chatat shechata bedarom yeh chayav Talmud omar לא תזבח להשם אלוקיך שור ועשה וגומר וכל דבר רע. על דבר רע אתה מחייבו אתה מחייבו על חטאת ששחטא בדרום. Brayta, this is exactly the opposite. And here Rabbi Yehuda says, you might think, can it be that if someone took a korban chatat and did shechita in the south part of the temple courtyard, would he be liable? And it quotes the same pasuk that we were talking about above. Do not offer to Hashem shor v'aseh that has a mum in it. Kol davara, kol al davara, something that is davara. Yes, you have to be liable. But if you did shechita in the south, that's not kol davara. One is not liable. But the pasuk, but the derasha before quoted the same pasuk and says, don't do this. Lo ta'aseh. It's pasul, and that includes doing shechita in the south. So therefore, it must be that would get lashes. And the answer here again is Tere Tanaea Libad Rabbi Yehuda. There's two different traditions about what Rabbi Yehuda said. The sugya continues and teaches Amar Rabbi Abba Umodeh Rabbi Yehuda shechozer vekob'o lepigul. Rabbi Abba says that Rabbi Yehuda would agree that, let's say for shechita, he has in mind that he's going to leave it over, it's notar. And so Rabbi Yehuda says at that point it already becomes pasul. And yet, if, let's say, during the next avodah, let's say Kabbalah, he has in mind pigul, that he's going to consume it after the time. Rabbi Yehuda says, even though it would be pasul anyway, because of the intention of notar, nevertheless, it will become pigul if he has intention for pigul in the next thing. The idea is that the pigul intention kind of includes already the intention to leave it over, because pigul, you're saying, oh, I'm only going to burn it tomorrow, meaning I'm not going to do anything today. So therefore, since it already includes not doing anything today, the fact that he had intention not to to leave it over is already included in pigul. So that psul is not a separate psul, but is all one. If it were a separate psul, then it would not be pigul, because one is liable to karet only if that's the only problem with the korban. אמר רבא, תדע דפיגול לפני זריקה לא כלום הוא, ועתיה זריקה וקבעה לה בפיגול. Rava says, I will support what Rabbi Abba said, because you should know that pigul, the intention to consume it after the time, before you do zidikah, is nothing yet. In other words, that intention is going to just holding there. It doesn't make it pigul right away when you do shechita with wrong intention or kabbalah with wrong intention. It just it's held there. And then only once you do zidikah, then the whole thing we say, okay, now you did everything right, because zidikah, that's the final thing, you did it good. And the only problem is the pigul intention, then it becomes pigul. And so therefore, since it doesn't kick in until zidikah anyway, so just because you had intention at the beginning for notar, that's not going to make it now already pasul, and then the pigul can't attach to that. No, it can, because we're waiting anyway till the end. And at the end of zidikah, we say, well, you had intention for notar, but that's included in pigul, because you had intention to not do anything today, leave it over, and to do something tomorrow. Therefore, yes, it is pigul chayav karet. Velahi, but the Gemara rejects this and this proof and says, "Hatam hu chada machshavahi, hachat re machshavot." No, in that case where you say, "Oh well, it's only at the end tzedikah," then you say it's pigul. It is pigul there because it was only one problematic thought, that of pigul. But in our case, there's two problematic intentions. One, for shechita, you said, I'm going to make it notat. And then you had another problematic thought. And therefore, since there's two problems with pigul, two wrongs actually make it better and would not be liable to cut it. So therefore, that is not a proof. And furthermore, we're actually going to disprove Rabbi Abba. Itive Rav Huna Rabbi Abba. Litena tani tani lema'la lemata lemata lema'la le'altar kasher chazar ve'chisheb chusim komo pasul ve'en bo karet chutz lizmano pigul ve'chayavin alav karet. Rav Huna challenged Rabbi Abba from this baraita. If someone had intention to offer that which should be above the line below or below above, if he had intention to that today, right away, when it's supposed to be, that's kosher, because above, below, intention for above and below, that's not going to make it pasul. If he then had intention about being outside its place, it will be pasul, or no karet, like any time you do it out of place, or intention out of time, that will be pigul, and one would be liable to karet. So the intention to be above and below the line that same day, you just ignore it. It's because it's kosher anyway, so therefore that does not undo the pigul status. However, lemachad pasul, if one had intention to put the blood above or below in the wrong place, in the wrong spot on the mizbeach, and intention to do that tomorrow, and then that's already pasul because he's intending to do it on the wrong day. Chazar v'chishev ben chutz lizmano ben chutz lizmkomo pasul ve'en bo karet. And then if he had, for the next item, a further intention, wrong intention, to consume it outside the place, outside the time or outside the place, it remains pasul, and you're not going to have karet, because thinking to do something outside or already lemachad already makes it pasul, and then so therefore once you are thinking that you're going to offer it, but it's in the wrong place, so it's in the wrong place at the wrong time, so that already makes it pasul. And once it's pasul, now you cannot go and add another intention of pigul to make it karet. And so therefore this refutes Rabbi Abba, tiyubta Rabbi Abba, tiyubta. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Ravina Bar Sila, Chishev sheyochilhu temeim lemachad hayav. Rav Chisda said, name of Ravina Bar Sila, if one is doing shechita, he has intention that a tameh person will eat it tomorrow. So now there's two problems, eating it tomorrow, but he's a tameh person that is going to do that, so he is hayav karet, because even though the tameh person is not allowed to eat it, but nevertheless, this is doing something the next day, which is already liable to karet, and because as pigul. Amar Rava, Teda de basar lifnei zirika la hazi v'chi mechashebe mifsil. Rava says, I have a proof for this, because after all, the flesh before you do zirika is not edible anyway. Just like a tameh person cannot eat it, the meat cannot be eaten before zirika. And yet, when you have intention in a regular pigul case, you have intention during shechita to consume it at the wrong time, it does become pigul. So to here, at the time that you intend, you're thinking of a tameh person. So that's the same thing. Even though a tameh person is not allowed to eat it, so too it can't be eaten now before zirika. And yet the wrong intention to eat it outside the time will make it pigul and chayav karet. So those are parallel cases. Velohi, but we reject that proof. Hatam zarik umichazi hacha la michazi kelal. In the regular pigul case, once you do zirika, then it will be edible. And so because it will be edible and everything else is good except for the pigul intent, that's why that is karet. But here, a tameh person will never be able to eat it no matter what you do. And therefore, the tameh intention so-called ruins, the pigul intent. And there is no liability to karet because you have an additional problem. Just like above, you had an additional problem that you thought of sprinkling it in the wrong place on the next day. So once you have it the wrong place on the next day, so there's not only the wrong day, or not only the wrong time, also the wrong place, that's an additional problem. Therefore, it's only pasul and not pigul, no liability to karet. And so to here, since you said a tameh person is going to eat it, well, that's already a problem. And so that problem will make it that the pigul is not the only problem, and therefore it is pasul, but would not be liable to karet. Amar Rav Chisda margela bepumeh de Rav Dimi bar Chinina. Rav Chisda said that there was a pearl in the mouth of Rav Dimi bar Chinina, meaning that there was a Devar Torah that he loved to say all the time. Besar Pesach shelo utzla v'lachameh todah shelo hurmu chayvin alehem mishum tum'ah. If you have a korban Pesach, but it was not roasted, in order to eat it, first you have to roast it. That's after you bring the korban, you do all the services in the mikdash, and then you take it. You have to roast it before eating it. However, if you do not roast it yet, or if you have the loaves of a korban todah, with the korban todah you have to bring 40 loaves, and you have to hurmu, you have to give 4 of the loaves, one of each type of 4 types, to the kohen. Only then can everyone eat all the other loaves. If you did not separate those 4 loaves, although you're supposed to, and you can't eat the rest of them until you give them. So both of these things are things that, well, you can't yet eat. You can almost eat. You did most of the work to make it valid, to make a korban valid, but you still have a little bit left to do. And both of these cases, if someone tameh eats it, they are liable. Now, generally, someone who is tameh is only liable if he eats from a korban that is edible to someone that's tahor. But these two are technically not edible even to someone who's tahor, because it wasn't yet roasted, or you did not separate the loaves for the kohen. Nevertheless, he says, these are like minor things that one has to do, and so it's almost edible. It's edible enough that someone tameh would be liable to karet for eating them. Rava says, I have proof for this statement from the pasuk that says anyone who eats from a korban shelamim asher laHashem, some extra words, while he is impure, he will get karet. Those extra words, asher laHashem, in the context of a tameh person getting karet, what does that come to include? Because you could just skip these words. You just said it's a shelamim. So what is it coming to add? It's coming to add l'rabot, to include the innards, the sacrificial parts of kadashim kalim, that one is someone who's tameh who eats them also will be liable to karet. When it comes to kadashim kalim, those parts, like the chayleb, supposed to be put on the mizbeach, so they're actually not edible. Therefore, these things are not technically edible yet, but they do go on the mizbeach, so they're like a little bit, kind of almost edible, somewhat in some way they're edible. And so the Shel Hashem says, if someone eats them, well, he's not allowed to eat them. While tameh, he will get karet, even though it's not something edible. Therefore, alma afagav de la benachilanu chayvin alehen mishum tumah. So just like the Emoreh, Kadashim, Kalim are not things that even a tahor person can eat. Not even a tahor person is not allowed to eat. Nevertheless, someone who's tameh is liable if he eats it. Tameh liable to karet. Hachanameh afagav de la benachilanu chayvin alehen mishum tumah. So too, Pesach shelo utzla and lachmeh todah shelo hurmu, although they're not edible, even a tahor person is not allowed to eat them. Nevertheless, someone who's tameh who eats them will get karet. So isn't that a good proof? But we say no. Velahi hatam emureh kadashim kalim hazul lagavoa. No, the sacrificial parts of the kadashim kalim, they are consumable to Most High. They are consumed by the mizbeach. So therefore, since they are in one sense consumable, therefore, a tameh person who eats them will get karet. Yes, but that's not the same as the other cases. La pukeh, besar pesach shelo utzla v'lachmeh todah shelo hurmu dela chazulo lagaboa v'lo lahejot. It comes to exclude korban pesach that was not roasted, or the loaves of todah that were not separated for the kohen, and given to him to eat, so everybody else could eat them, because these cannot be not by the mizbeach and not by a person, and therefore this is not a good proof for the statement above. Lishna charina he'emurin lachazu. This is the same content, just with different words in a short form. But the emurin are not fit to be eaten by a person, only by the mikdash, and yet a tameh person who eats them will be liable to karetz. Isn't that a good proof? No. Velahi hanach chazu lemiltayu v'hane la chazu kelal. The emoreh kadashim kalim are fit for what they're fit for, meaning to be burnt on the mizbeach, whereas the korban pesach that did not get roasted and the loaves that were not separated are not fit at all, not for the mizbeach and not for any person. Hazran alach kol hapesulin.